So I wanted to share my experience as an autistic person with ADHD with being bullied all my life. The amount of bullying that I experienced was overwhelming, and I don't believe it's possible for someone to go through what I went through and not come out undamaged, untraumatized, especially when you're autistic and your brain is hardwired to internalize things as trauma. When you are harassed and humiliated and even physically abused day in and day out for many years, at that age too, when you're still becoming who you are, when you're in your formative years, it causes lifelong damage, lifelong fears of people, especially when you're autistic, because autistic people tend to make generalizations based on just maybe one or two negative experiences, such as having one failed interaction with a person and then seeing all people as a threat after that. That's how we are. And I just wanted to tell some stories about what happened so people can understand what it's like as an autistic person going through these years. It's not just me. We all get bullied. Every one of us is labeled as weird, different, and to the herd that seems like a threat. And they have no problem ganging up on us. Um, I think it's kind of like a biological thing, seeing the weird one, the different one as maybe diseased and must be eliminated. It started in kindergarten and I got pushed down by this girl. I don't even know why. She just decided to push me down in an angry way. And I landed in those little spiky ball things from the trees. And I remember just like being in pain and being confused. I knew in kindergarten that I didn't belong. I just felt like there was nowhere for me, even in kindergarten. And my mom would get complaints from the teacher that I wasn't speaking. And I remember being afraid at school because I didn't know what it was. No one really gave me a good explanation for what school was, what the whole point was. And being surrounded by these kids and realizing that I needed to come up with a way to be received by them. And I realized after observing people that um, the kids that were like the most daring, you know, were the most well received. So I started doing daring things like chopping my hair off and doing crazy stuff to try to like gain their approval. So that was like my first memory of masking. But my point is, even back then, I knew I wasn't accepted. And then in like third grade, I was bullied by this girl. Every time I would leave the room to go to the bathroom or whatever, she would bully me and be like, "Where are you going, Bonnie?" And I just put up with it over and over again until one day I was like, "None of your beeswax," and I thought I was like the coolest person in that moment because I said that, and that was like such a cuss word for a kid to say that. But and she backed off after that. But I noticed like I would always end up getting hit in the head with like basketballs or soccer balls or whatever during recess. Like I would get hit in the head all the time. I didn't think it was bullying at the time, but now I can look back and think it must have been on purpose because there was one time where it was like 3 times in one day. By 4th grade, I noticed that cliques were forming, that, there was like the popular clique. I was definitely not part of it. Um, but things didn't get really bad until 5th grade. Now, first of all, most bullying for autistic kids gets really bad in 5th grade, and the reason for that is, in 5th grade, that's when kids start to mature enough to realize you're different, and that's when they start attacking you. So 5th grade came, and I was part of, like, the reject class, like, they put together this group of kids for this new teacher that they didn't want. So the teachers selected who they wanted, and then whoever they didn't want, they put with the new teacher because she was new and she wasn't part of their clique. So I was put with a bunch of bullies. So it was already bad enough that it was 5th grade, but it was also like the worst class ever. And unfortunately, the teacher got into a very severe horse accident where her both of her knees broke backwards and she was out of school the whole year. So we had to have substitute teachers all year long, and they would change constantly because the teachers would refuse to come back because our class was so bad to them. Like, the class would, harass the teacher to make them leave, and they would do it for sport, and I was just an innocent victim in this situation because they would attack me too. They would make fun of the way I looked, you know, um, all the time. They made fun of the way I ate, when I had food kind of on my chin. I would use my teeth to get it. They'd make fun of me. Anything they could think of, they'd make fun of me. I was just constantly being harassed. I got pushed down again by this girl, and all the girls were backing her up. Like, they were all surrounding her while I'm like on the ground, like looking up. And she made the weirdest comment in that moment I did not expect at all because they were like telling me I'm ugly all year. And I was pretty ugly. I was, kind of chunky and had like really white hair, really pale skin, buck teeth. I was not pretty. But in that moment, she's like, "You think everybody likes you because you're pretty, don't you?" And I'm like, "You think I'm pretty?" I was just on the ground, like, "Huh?" I think the reason she said that was, we had a Spanish class where we had to have Spanish names, and because my name is Bonnie, the teacher gave me the name Bonita, and Bonita means beautiful. Bonnie means beautiful too. But anyway, I think that might have caused some jealousy because I was getting attention from the teacher. But yeah, they called me ugly all the time. There was one day that I came to school in these awesome pants that I found at Limited too, and I thought they were so pretty. I was so excited about them because they were from Limited Too. That was the store that every girl wanted to shop at. And they were so cool. They were like black corduroy with like all these little like flowers embroidered onto them, like kind of like the 60s style flowers, like hippie style. And I thought they were amazing. And I went to school. I'm like, everyone's gonna think I look so good. They tore me apart because of my pants. And I was like just so devastated. Because once again, I am rejected. Once again, I am picked on and humiliated. I ended up becoming friends with some of the younger kids because I was part of the after school program where we would just wait for our parents after school, and a lot of them were younger. And I had a lot of friends in third grade because the younger kids accepted me. They didn't know I was weird yet. There was one slumber party that I went to um, with some of the, I guess, popular girls, and I think it was fifth grade. And that was the first and the last one that I ever went to, because I didn't fit in there. I knew it. They knew it. I realized that they were just kind of mean. Like, they were mean to each other, and I didn't understand that, but it was, like, fun for them. One of the girls from that group ended up telling my best friend, like, years later, like, "Yeah, Bonnie, she's not like us." That's the comment she made. And they all knew pretty early on that I was not like them, I was different, and I wasn't invited into their group. There was one time I was actually beaten up by my babysitter's little brother. He was, like, 6 years old, and I was, like, 10. Um, but he did it on a trampoline, and he, like, straddled me and punched me in the stomach over and over again till I couldn't breathe and I couldn't move because, even though he was a lot younger, he was still a boy. Boys are stronger by nature. Um, so I literally got beaten up, and it was like for no reason, no apparent reason. Now, fifth grade was hell, but middle school was even worse. Middle school was the worst time in my entire life. It's the time that I probably need therapy for because of how vicious these kids were, and unfortunately, it was the same people in high school. So it just felt like an ongoing battle that wouldn't end because you were legally required to go to school. My mom could not homeschool me because she was a single mother, so I had to go. Um, and it got so bad that like she would cry when she dropped me off because she had no choice. It was like dropping me off, into the lion's den every day. Um, so I was tall, way too tall for my age. I was like, I don't know, 10 inches taller than everybody. super thin, super pale, white hair, super bad acne, I had my buck teeth. I got braces, which I was very proud of. It was actually in style to have braces, so that was like one thing I had going for me, but um I was just so awkward. I was awkward looking. I was awkward in my behavior. And the first day of middle school, I was so excited because I had a Backstreet Boys shirt, and I loved the Backstreet Boys, and I was so excited to wear it. And I found out pretty quick that that shirt was never going to be acceptable and that I needed to conform to survive. At that point, I didn't really know or understand yet that like you had to dress a certain way, you had to act a certain way. And I felt like this was so limiting and devastating, but I had to do it to get through this. But yeah, they must have caught on that I wasn't from a wealthy family because I was picked on relentlessly over my clothing because at that time it was like if you didn't wear American Eagle, there was something wrong with you. And I didn't even know what American Eagle was. I'd never even been to that store, heard of it, nothing. But I ended up going home and telling my mom, I need to go to American Eagle and get these shirts that say American Eagle. And I need to have clothes that say a name brand on them. So I went to Old Navy and Gap and all these places and I got shirts that said the brand names. And I went to school one day with my Old Navy shirt on, and the letters were embroidered on. And that same girl that pushed me down in fifth grade, she backed me against a wall and flicked my shirt. And she's like, "What are these letters glued on? Did you glue these letters on?" Um, so that happened. And then I wore a Gap shirt one day, and this kid, like, he laughed at me and said I was gay and proud because I was wearing Gap, because Gap is an acronym for gay and proud, which I don't think it is, but anyway, it was like there was no winning. If I wear cheap clothes, I get picked on. If I wear name brands, I get picked on. I was told I was ugly and I needed to wear makeup. So I came to school with makeup on and they laughed me to scorn. I like cried and the makeup was all over my face. And I had to spend the whole day with makeup all over my face because I was wearing makeup and that was funny to them. Sorry. Um, so there's like no winning. And I learned very fast that you can't please people. So what's the point? You know? That's why in my 30s, I'm myself, because it's a lot easier to be me. No matter what I do, I'm rejected. So anyway, yeah, made fun of my clothes, made fun of my looks. They told me I was ugly, I was weird. Um, Again, in middle school, I was pushed down again, and this time I slammed into the corner of a desk. I slid all the way down the desk corner on my back till I fell on the ground and I just looked up at this girl and I had this expression and I know I had this expression because this is what I was thinking in that moment. Like, why? Why? And I think she was gonna start punching me, but she like had a moment of like clarity or something where she realized that I was like pathetic and she felt bad. Like all the people around stared at me and felt kind of bad. And then I got up. The guy that made fun of my Gap shirt, I was walking through the hallway with like all my stuff in my arms, my project, and he tripped me and I went like flying and fell on the ground. All my stuff went flying and nobody like helped me pick my stuff up. Um Another guy just walked up and pushed me against the lockers, just for no reason, just to be mean. I was so white that like everybody assumed that I was albino. um they thought I was albino. Like one kid walked up and was like, "Are you the albino girl?" And I'm like, "No." They made fun of my white legs and like, like PE class where you have to do these challenges, like you have to run back and forth and then get the eraser off the floor and put it over there or whatever. And all the kids sit there in a row and watch you. Well, I had to do that. And, these girls were laughing at me and making fun of my white legs, you know. PE was the worst. It was like the place you go to be humiliated if you're me. Horrible, horrible, 'cause I was not athletic, um, at all. My thing was music, and when I was in the talent show in 8th grade, the entire crowd talked while I was singing, um, until I messed up, and then they laughed, and then after the talent show, they were like, "Oh, that you were just lip syncing the whole time," and I was like, "No, I wasn't." Like, there was a background singer on the track doing the backing vocals, but I was singing, and they still, like, wouldn't give me any credit. When I got a tan, they made fun of me for having a fake tan. Like, "Oh, like, you're albino, but you just, like, put on some color on your skin," or, like, no matter what I did, it was just always ridicule from all these people. A lot of people, almost everybody rejected me, except for, like, the couple of friends I had. We had an 8th grade dance, and I tried on all these dresses, and I'm very particular about how I feel in clothes. The only dress that I liked, the way I felt in, the way I looked, was a white dress. And of course, I was like really white, so I probably shouldn't have gotten that dress, but I loved it. I thought I looked like a princess. I felt so good in it. I was so excited to wear it and be pretty and finally be accepted because I was the prettiest I'd ever looked in my life. And when we all showed up at the restaurant, all the kids to go out to eat before the dance, the entire popular group laughed at me when they saw me in the dress. And that was just one more thing, one more failure. There was one time in middle school, my notebook and my book bag went missing. And come to find out, the boys had stolen my stuff and brought my stuff into the bathroom and peed on my stuff. One of those boys actually harassed me and threatened to rape me, and he was scary. And he said it in a very, very scary way, like, "I'm gonna rape you." Like, it was really scary. He never did, to my knowledge. I mean, I could have blocked it out. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff I blocked out from my childhood. The word got out that I had a crush on this popular guy. He was like really, really cute. And when they found out, they all laughed at me, um, in front of everybody, like in the hall, they laughed at me. My mom said she didn't believe how bad it was until she went to like a school dance. Like she chaperoned a school dance and she watched me interact with my peers. And I remember this happening. There was one time I walked up to these people and talked to them. They were supposed to be like my friends. I thought they were my friends. And they completely turned around and walked away after I talked to them. I was really socially challenged and I didn't understand certain things. Like I didn't understand that it was inappropriate to write letters to boys that you had a crush on. I had written this letter to my crush and he was so mortified that I wrote him the letter that he burnt it in a trash can in front of people and they laughed. Um so I was just like a joke to everybody. And that was around the time where we started chatting online on AOL Instant Messenger and I did get cyberbullied. Like, I messaged a guy, and he gave me a really hard time and, basically screwed with me really bad. I actually have that conversation printed out in my keepsake box because I printed some conversations back then, and I read it as an adult, and I'm like, "This kid this kid was bullying me. This kid was, like, abusing me." Another time I was cyberbullied was actually in high school, and someone made a Zanga page about me, which was like kind of a blog, website, saying 25 reasons why I hate Bonnie Walker. But a lot of it wasn't even true at all. High school was really bad too, but the abuse was less physical and more emotional because I was completely rejected and ostracized by the majority of those people. Like they bullied me a lot, but most of it was just ignoring me. They still made fun of my clothes. I have a memory of just sitting at a desk before class started, just minding my own business, and these 3 popular girls were, like, sitting they were kinda bunched together around one desk, like, making fun of me, like, pointing at my outfit and, like, whispering and laughing. A lot of the popular kids were in my Spanish class, which was very problematic because I was bullied by many of those people just every day, and it was, like, humiliating, um, until one day I decided to defend myself and call the girl a B word because she was just being a jerk to me, and I'm like, "Why do you have to be such a B word?" And I got detention for that. So all these years, the adults did nothing to help me. And then when I start to defend myself, I get in trouble. And that's very common with autistic people. We are usually rejected also by the adults. The adults will side with the neurotypical kids against the autistic kids because they hate us too. Um, Neurotypicals stick together, basically. One of the girls in Spanish that bullied me, she decided to come up to me right before I went on stage one time to perform in the talent show to say, I bully you in Spanish because I'm bored, right? Like, I don't even know why she did that. I was thinking in the moment, like, why would you tell me that right now? But I think looking back, she might have been trying to screw me up a little bit. She also told me that I should try to belt when I sang, and I couldn't belt without yodeling. My voice would just crack. I think she might have been trying to screw me up. I don't know. It was weird. It was definitely weird. There was this one guy that would bully me every single day in class. He would just sit there with his middle finger up at me, like flicking me off. And he'd be like, "You're gay," which is kind of funny. I joke about it now, like, "You're gay." But he would just say that, like, every day while flicking me off. No reason. Another time, my book bag went missing while I was in the lunch line and found out that somebody I knew had thrown my book bag in the trash, but I couldn't find my book bag, so I had to go get, the principal or the assistant principal, I don't remember which one, to help me. So he actually went to her and asked her where the book bag was to get it so I could take my stuff to my class. I had a girl on the bus bully me all the time, and she actually threatened to stab me just because I looked like a boy with my hair pulled back. That was her reason. As far as boys go, I was just like so boy crazy. I was desperate to have a boyfriend, but most of them had no interest in me whatsoever. There was one that liked me, but he was afraid to be seen with me because I was a loser. So he would try to like see me in private, but he would never announce it to anybody. He would never allow me to be seen with him or ever join his table or anything like that. It wasn't until after high school when my skin miraculously cleared up right after high school, that boys started to contact me. So I think it was a combination of like my skin clearing up and not being in that setting anymore. Like they could see me, without being humiliated. Toward the end of high school, I rebelled. It was like 11th grade. I rebelled. I was like, no more Miss Nice Bonnie. I had been abused, rather. I don't want to say bullied now because it's like more like abuse. I had been abused by these people all of those years in a row, constantly, and no adult helped me, and I was tired of being stepped all over. So I decided to do what I wanted. I rebelled. I was like, screw you, screw this place. I hate my life. I hate this school. I want to get out of here. And I started to get in trouble. Um, I didn't have anybody to eat with at lunch one year because the friends I did have either graduated already or didn't have my lunch period. So I was like alone and I was humiliated sitting by myself. So I went to the counselor and asked her if there was anything I could do besides lunch. So she set me up to be a teacher's assistant during lunch period. And that was during my rebellious time. And I ended up hooking up with this guy in the class who, by the way, was younger than me. I don't think he realized I was a loser. So, and by the way, I was starting to look a little bit better physically. And we ended up like flirting and like kissing in the hallway. I got caught by the teacher. I got in trouble for my clothes one day, like by this other teacher, because I was wearing like a low cut shirt. And I told the teacher off. I was like, "The rule is no cleavage, right?" And she's like, "Yes." I'm like, "Do you see cleavage here?" Because I was super skinny. I had like a flat chest. I had no cleavage. And she's like, "Well, no." I'm like, "Well, then I'm not breaking any rules." And I just walked away. So I was like the bad girl then. Um, I ended up graduating early because technically you can, but if you don't finish the last semester, you can't go to college. And I knew I wasn't going anyway because I didn't have a good enough GPA. And I was told by the principal not even to bother applying to college because my grades were so bad. But I graduated early to get the heck out of there. And then I spent the summer, doing a glow up, getting tan, getting pretty. So, I went to graduation looking really great. And um after the graduation, I just like put my middle fingers in the air and I walked off. I'm like, screw all you people. I'm never gonna see you again. I ended up going to one of the popular people parties, like, after graduation, because my friend at the time was going to that thing. Um, and the girls all put their noses up at me, but the guys were like, kinda into me because I looked really good, um, at that point in my life. And I guess the girls were mad that I was flirting with their men. I never got with any of those guys, but, it was kind of fun just, like, letting loose and saying, "Screw you, people." Um, and now, of course, like, I'm getting news about, like, the 20-year high school reunion, like, I'm not going to that. I didn't go to the first one because I wasn't invited, and when I saw pictures from it, I actually started to break out into hives because of, like, seeing these people again all together, being all chummy. So I kind of believe that because high school was over, my life was going to just completely improve. Everything was going to get better because I was out of there. But I had to get a job, right? So I started working at Applebee's and I quickly realized that high school never ends. The customers at Applebee's were super mean to me. I mean, it was just like people are so cruel to servers. I will never do that job again. I wasn't even that good at it, but I thought that I was good enough to be treated like a human, and I wasn't, and I was stiffed all the time, By the way, servers only make like $2 an hour. They rely on their tips, and a lot of people don't know that, and they don't tip, and it's detrimental to the server's income. But anyway, because of realizing that the world is also cruel, it's not just high school, I fell into a deep depression and it ruined the relationship that I was in at the time. Because he didn't want to be with a depressed girl. I was a downer. I was, a bummer. So I lost my boyfriend, but since then, I've noticed I am treated poorly in general by family, by strangers, by people on the internet. Just, I am just a rejected person. I am a thing the world doesn't want. And there's no way that I can feel comfortable around people because of the trauma I've endured, especially since it only takes like one or two for an autistic person to label all people as a threat. Every single time I see a person, I automatically assume that they are a threat to me. They do not like me. Anytime I get any kind of look from a person, I assume that they're judging me. I assume that they hate me. Now that I've decided to like be my true self, I really get rejected. I don't have like anybody that actually talks to me in my family besides like my parents and my husband. But anyway, I just wanted to share that experience. I know a lot of autistic and ADHD people will relate. Sorry if I was a bummer. But I feel like it's a story that needs to be told. I never got any apologies from anybody like that bullied me. Not one person has come forward to apologize, and I'd be willing to bet that they don't even know what they did. They probably don't even remember it because it meant nothing to them, but it meant a lot to me, especially when so many of them did it. And I was continuously harassed day in and day out for years. Um, yeah, we need to stop calling it bullying, start calling it abuse because that's truly what it is. And abuse causes serious negative impacts on the brain and the nervous system forever, especially when you go through the abuse when you're young. So, anyway, hope you have gotten something out of this video, and feel free to share your experiences in the comments. All right, God bless.